Sorry for being a little bit late today. I was busy with something else. I apologize. Hey Mats, nice to see you again. Hope everyone's doing well today. Is it Thursday? No, it's Monday today. Yes. Did I have a correct guided group? Yes, it's correct. Good. Sometimes I worry that I put on the wrong one. I hope you had a good week. Good start to the week. It was interesting before. I think, should I even tell the story? Sometimes I think about, like, there's so many fun stories that can be relatable to meditation, but then also there's some stories that are just fun. Hey Andreas, nice to see you. I thought that actually today we'd work a little bit more with the whole sense of self, and we did an exercise last time where we looked at the hand and we tried, or a part of our body, and we tried to see can you see that there is something observing the hand, like that distance in between. So I thought maybe we'd try a little bit more with that, because it's a interesting exercise that can lead to some nice insights if you do it for a while, because you can really start changing your perspective. And I think that's the main thing that I think that, especially Theravada Buddhism, which is based on knowledge. Theravada is kind of like the Orthodox Church, is the old school, and they really believe in their scriptures. It's the teachings of the Buddha is the holy part. If you look at how the monks live, they do more studying than meditation. The majority of monks, not all of them. So they value the words of the Buddha more than actually doing it, which is a shame. And the problem is that we're talking about things that you can't. It's not about understanding them. I mean, if you understand it intellectually, it means absolutely nothing. And it doesn't matter if it's in a dead language that the Buddha spoke, or if even, the Theravadan texts are in Pali, which is not the language that the Buddha spoke, but it's the closest translation we have. Hey Catherine, I had a really good weekend, thank you. So I always found that interesting, that we focus so much on the knowledge and the word and trying to understand the thing, when in fact it's not about understanding. It's like you actually need to change your perspective somehow. You need to change your way of viewing the world and the things around you. And that's, you can hear someone say something and that can help you, but ultimately you have to do it yourself. It's not something you can get from just hearing a text. You have to sit with that and, well, not necessarily sit and meditate, but you have to feel it. So it's a feeling thing. And when people talk about no self, they talk about it as if though it's a concept, like they talk about how we're all one, and then you kind of disappear from that, and there's no what it actually feels like is a lack of perspective. So you actually stop feeling I am here and I'm watching out there. This like perspective thing kind of disappears. And for many people, when that perspective thing disappears, also the seeking disappears. So when people start practicing meditation or any kind of spiritual practice, they look for something. I want to find out the purpose of life. Why am I here? What's my life purpose? What am I supposed to do with my life? Or how am I supposed to live my life? Like, all these questions seem very important, but when the sense of self kind of lessens, the thing that happens is the perspective changes, and together with that, many times the question of where do we come from? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What happens after we die? Those questions are irrelevant. They just, like, the feeling that they are important is not there. So it's not that you find the answers to them, it's that they just stop being important, because you believe that if I could only find the answer to this question, then something will change. And I am very important, so it's important that I find the answer to this question. Does that make sense? So my belief is that we kind of go around this the whole wrong way. We're trying to figure things out, when it's not at all about figuring it out. Is you can never. There's no purpose. There's no point in trying to understand it. The reason you would want to understand it is because you want to shift your perspective, and that's not something you get from knowledge. It's something you get from observing what's happening. Hey, Mindful Mama, nice to see you. So, doing these exercises, what we're trying to do is to start seeing that perspective. For many people, it's difficult for me because I can't actually remember. Sometimes, like, is that really true? Do you feel like there's a perspective? I can't feel it anymore. So it's difficult for me to even know if that's real. It's many, many years since I had that. But I do remember when it started going away, how strange it was that I could kind of feel myself here, and I was watching there. And then when you're in these non-centric experiences or non-dual, they kind of, it's like that disappears, and you feel like you're out there looking here, and you can't feel like, am I here looking there? I'm actually there looking here. Like that kind of gets loosened up until eventually there's not really a strong sense of that happening, and it's more like it's all here, but there's no distance in between. So it's an actual sensation, a change of how you perceive reality. That's very tangible. It's not like some airy-fairy thing, like, no, it really does change. And if you meditate and you go into some of these states, you'll feel that. And if you know what to look for, you're like, oh, wait a minute, like, yeah, actually I can see that. I made a video about the first time I was in a non-dual experience. And I talk about how I go out, and I remember, still remember the place where that happened. And I walked out and I looked at the flower. I'm like, wow, am I looking at the flower? Is the flower looking at me? And I was, whoa. And then I went out and I looked at a puddle, and I put my hand in the puddle, and it's like, wow, look at that. Whoa. So fascinating to see the waves and the ripples on the water. So it's really a change of perspective that happens, and that's not something you understand, that's something you experience. So what we try to do with the exercise, where we sit and meditate, we focus on our breath, and then we say, okay, where is my foot or my hand or my head? But let's take the hand to make it easy. So I observe my hand, and then we try to feel, okay, here's my hand, and you try to feel the things here. Can you see that there's sensation or observation is coming from here to there? There's a kind of distance between this, and there's like usually like almost like a tension, like a rod that can go through the arm sometimes, but you can feel that observation originates somewhere going to your hand, and then when you sit, they can shift. So I think today we'll do a little bit of that, just to continue and then see if it's, like I said, this is the kind of stuff that I do many times in the coaching sessions, but then I have more time and individually go through and guide people. But it's the same principle. It's not really like you need to do that. You should be able to get the basics and experiment with it yourself, and you'll be able to start detangling these things. And it's not, don't look for two things. Don't look for some kind of miracle experience where everything changes and all of a sudden everything's so wonderful. It's not really how it works. And also something I had a long discussion with just the other day with one of my students. We believe that it's kind of, I do this one difficult thing and then I'm rewarded with just feeling this like nice feeling and relating to the world. Whereas in fact, it's not that you do find some secret experience or some super special experience. It's that you constantly allow yourself to enjoy being here. Because when you allow yourself to enjoy being here, the self disappears, because the self does not enjoy being here. The self is important. The self wants to be someone, go somewhere, become something, understand something. It can't just sit still and be here. So actually, when you focus on feeling, I call it the distortion method, but I actually had another name that I've been thinking of, which is the feel-good method. Because what you really need to do is feel good. You need to learn how to feel good and enjoy being here. That's what all of this is about. It's not about meditational experiences or anything. It's really just here, like feeling your senses, being in your senses. So I thought we'd experiment with it and we'll see how it goes. If people find that it's not really doing anything, maybe it's like too difficult to kind of grasp it because we don't have continuity in that way. But I thought it'd be fun to try something new and just see how people react to it. And if not, tell me and we'll do something else. So for those of you new, we usually start with just a little chat before. Now I've just had a monologue many times. It's a chat. People are quiet in the chat today. And then we We do the 5-4-3-2-1 method, which is an exercise to bring us to our senses, into our senses, where we say out aloud 5 things we can see, feel, hear, smell, and taste. And the reason we do that is because we want to actually come into our senses without that distortion towards things, without having a judgment or feeling that this is a special way. So we're trying to just see the shadows, the shapes, the colors, the textures, and just observe that. And then when we do that, it's a very good exercise if you feel stressed, or if you're with someone who's having a panic attack. This is a really good exercise if they're willing to do it. They might not be, but if they're willing to do it, it can be a really good way to bring them back to their senses and out of their minds if they're too stuck. And after that, we sit for 20 minutes. Today is Monday, so it's guided meditation. And then after, it's questions and answers if anyone has any questions. So, to start out, 5 things we can see, and we say them out loud, and you can do them together with me. I see a brown, really strange chair. I just said don't put any value in it, but that is a really interesting looking chair. I'll show it to you one day. And I see some colored pens. Really take the time to observe the thing you're looking at. I see a painted lizard. My father did. I see a lock. And I see my reading glasses. Those are 5 things that I could see. And now 4 things I can touch. I can touch the tea with my throat. I can touch this sofa. I can touch this baton that I'll use for the bell. And I can touch my beard. So there's 4 things that I can touch. Now we take 3 things that we can hear and try to listen for sounds that aren't at the forefront. Try to see if you can see something a little bit more in the back, maybe an ambient sound that you wouldn't have noticed immediately at first. I can hear the wind rattling the leaves. I can hear a high-pitched, I think that's actually tinnitus. There's a high-pitched sound that's ringing. And I can hear the vibrations from the compressor for the air conditioner. Then we take 2 things that we can smell. I can smell cold air. I can smell mint. And then finally, 1 thing that we can taste. It's a citrusy flavor. So for this meditation, we'll be using our breath as our object of meditation. This is not a breathworks meditation or a purely concentration meditation where we try to force the breath to work a certain way. This is a meditation where we try to step to the side and let breath happen without our influence. So we're not trying to control the breath, we're just trying to let breath happen however it wills itself to happen. We're also not focusing on a small point of the breath. We're not trying to narrow down our awareness to a tiny needle pin prick at the back of our nostrils as the air comes in and goes down the throat, or find some small tingling feeling or sensation of the breath. Instead, we're focusing on widening our awareness. We want to be aware of a field, of almost the sensations of our whole upper body or our whole body, and being aware that breath is happening in that area. For the next 20 minutes, it will probably be likely that your thoughts are going to come in, or that you'll have a comfortable, cozy sensation that you want to nestle in with and drift away into some dream. Or maybe it's an unpleasant, really uncomfortable sensation of something terrible or bad that happened to you that you get stuck in. But I want you to ask yourself that for the next 20 minutes, is it okay to just put that to the side? You can analyze, you can think, you can judge, you can evaluate, you can come up with solutions, and you can try to figure out your whole life if you want to. But for the next 20 minutes, ask yourself if it's okay to take a break from all of that and instead just focus on one very simple thing. The most basic of things we do as humans, which is to breathe. Actually, not to breathe, but to focus on the breath. Since we're not trying to breathe, we're trying to let breath happen. So give yourself permissions for the next 20 minutes to just leave all of the worldly problems or joyous things you have around you. Just leave that until after the meditation. So I want you to, if you haven't already, bring your awareness to the breath and start feeling, what does it feel like when breath is happening in your upper torso? This breath is going in and out, in and out. Now, to make it a little bit easier to follow the breath, we're going to do an exercise where we count the breath from 1 to 8 and then down again from 8 to 1. And I will do this with you the first time, and then after that you can continue and do it by yourself. So together, breathing in and breathing out. 1. Breathing in and breathing out. 2. Breathing in and breathing out. 3. Breathing in and breathing out. 4. Breathing in and breathing out. 5. Breathing in, breathing out. 6. Breathing in and breathing out. 7. Breathing in breathing out. 8. Breathing in and breathing out. 7. Breathing in and breathing out. 6. Breathing in and breathing out. 5. Breathing in and breathing out. 4. Breathing in and breathing out. 3. Breathing in and breathing out. 2. Breathing in and breathing out. 1. Now continue counting your breath by yourself from 1 to 8, and then down again from 8 to 1 as you breathe in and out. 1. Breathe in and out. As you sit and observe your breath, try to widen your awareness to encompass your right hand. Try to feel what your right hand feels like. Can you feel your pinky finger, your thumb, the skin on the outside of the hand? and then the inside of the hand. Just get a sense of where your hand is and feel what it feels like. And as you're doing this, see if you can see where or who, let's say who is doing the observing. Where is the perspective coming from? Is there a center point somewhere that is observing their hand? Can you feel a pressure between your hand and wherever the sense of you is, that is just feeling and observing your hand? Try moving your awareness back and forth to observe what your hand feels like. Sometimes it might shift and swap, so it feels like you are the hand observing the body. The sense of you can feel like it moves around and goes to the hand all of a sudden. Whatever happens, it's just an experience. You could even feel that the sense of you moves outside of your physical body and is observing the hand from right above you or to the side or in front of you or somewhere else. Again, it's just an experience. And throughout this whole exercise or experience, you always have your breath to come back to. You can always go back to your breath and start counting again. And even now, as you're observing your hand, use your breath as your anchor to be sure that you don't disappear into some fantasy or try to analyze what you're observing or understand it or go too deep. You're just trying to observe the hand and whoever or whatever is observing the hand and the pressure that builds up between those two. And you can either just keep awareness on the breath as you do this, or you can start counting your breath as you're breathing in and breathing out. 1. Breathing in and breathing out. If you want, you can continue to observe the hand, whoever is observing the hand, or you can return to your breath again. And as you return to your breath, if you choose to do so, can you see a perspective there as well? Where is the observation of the breath coming from? Are you the breath? Are you separate from the breath? Is it coming from your torso area? From up in your skull? Maybe it's from another planet. I don't know. You observe. Where does the sense of you come from that observes your breath? As you're staying aware and observing your breath, as you're breathing in and breathing out. 1. Breathing in and breathing out. As usual, if you want to, you can continue sitting, or it's open to ask any questions if you have them. I recommend you that when you stop meditating, try to keep the awareness that you had in the meditation, so you don't just go up and start moving around. I've talked about this before. A good exercise is to break your meditation with your mobile phone. So bring up your telephone and start scanning Facebook or Instagram or, God forsake, Twitter or X, if you want to call it that. That's probably the worst place to go looking around. But do that and see if you can feel any distortion towards what's going on there and what you're seeing. If there are no questions, you're also welcome to just sit and drink tea for a little while. I'd be curious to hear if anyone tried the feeling their hand and seeing the perspective and then moving that to your breath, and how that worked out for you. Perspective is a really important thing that does change, and it changes your life when it becomes different, because things won't feel so in your face. There will always be a should I say disconnect, because before you felt like you're there and you're doing something to me, but when that perspective disappears, it doesn't feel like things are happening so directly at you. It doesn't feel so threatening. It doesn't feel like there's anything here that really can be offended, hurt in a way, or threatened. Hey JVP, nice to have you here. And it might not be apparent at first when you start looking for this, but I want you to be aware of it, because it's one of the things that do change, and especially in the beginning there can be some rather drastic changes at times that a lot of this falls away, and it can almost be a bit confusing at times. I do think it happens to many people who don't actually know what it is, and then they're just confused because things don't feel the same anymore. And one of the reasons it's scary to these kind of exercises and to start working on yourself is that you have an idea of, this is me, I'm like this, I feel like this, I relate to the world like this, and I have an image that I carry with me. And when that starts changing, it can be a bit disconcerting, to say the least. See, Mindful Mama is saying, interesting, when you say shifting your perspective makes you feel like it is not happening directly to you, but I find everything to be much more intense, like feelings and sensations, because now I'm more aware of it. Yes, those are two different things. So you when you meditate, you become more aware of things happening. So many people go on autopilot and just go through, and they're just in this like daze kind of. They're not, because when you're in the distortions or this feeling of like I'm relating to everything and things are happening, that distorts your senses, so you don't really see clearly. If you ever been driving a car and you've driven for half an hour, like, oh crap, like I've just driven the car for half an hour and have no idea what I did, I don't know what I drove, or like it just goes by. That's not because you were relaxed and you forgot about it. That's usually because you're so caught up in your thoughts and things that you're like not really aware of your senses. Compared to when you're in a non-centric state, then you're really aware of them. So one thing is, just like you say, when you focus inwards and you observe your senses, things become more clear and intense sometimes. But then there's a more long-term shift. Like I said, the perspective of I'm here, going here, that's not something you just get like in a meditation and it changes like that. Well, it can actually do that, because there are things that can happen that can change it. But it's not like you do this exercise really good and then you're rewarded by dropping this. That's not how it works. It can take years, or it can take months or weeks or days or 10 minutes. It just matters. Yeah, it just depends. So those are two different things. I see Andreas is saying, sometimes when I meditate, I feel a nagging feeling or resistance that I have to move. What is your strategy against this? So a nagging feeling or resistance that I have to move. A resistance to, I didn't understand that sentence. A nagging feeling or resistance that I have to move. That makes you move, or a resistance towards moving? Elaborate that a little bit. I'll take JVB while I wait. JVB, if I may ask, I've been wondering about this. What exactly made you decide to not be a Buddhist monk anymore? Did you get disillusioned about something regarding Buddhist monks' teachings or something? No, it was, there's a few things that made it. I mean, part of it was that I just walked around and felt happy most of the time. I just felt good, and that's kind of what I wanted. So I felt good more on a more consistent basis, and the thing was that it didn't feel, how should I put it? It didn't feel like that was it, because even if I could feel good at a center where everything was taken care of for me, I mean, that's one thing, but how do I feel good in society? Because I never had those things triggered. And now that I have a partner, I have kids, I have a job, I have friends, I have responsibilities. Now I have things constantly clashing with the sense of me that just weren't really touched before. So that's been quite a journey to observe all these things. So part of it was that I just felt good, and the reason I left was gone. I left because I wanted to find my life purpose and figure out all these things, and I no longer had those questions. Not because I found the answers, but because the sense of self that needed the answers was gone. So I didn't feel like I needed to find the answers. That doesn't mean the sense of self is completely gone. It's just that the need to seek or find something is gone. I think a lot of people confuse this. There's the, like, the observer. They say, like, you stir with the stick in the fire and eventually the stick disappears and there's no observer. But there's still a sense of self, even though it doesn't feel like there's an observer. There's like more layers to it. So part of it was that, and I wanted to go deeper in that, and I believe that going back to society was probably the best way to do that. And also another thing was I was really tired of spiritual people. Like, oh my goodness. It's just, yeah. I just wanted to have normal people around me, kind of like we can have just a normal discussion. And also everything doesn't have to be like deep down into the soul about everything and just find meanings. And people came up to me, and as soon as we had a conversation, they started talking about, they put so much words and ideas into my mouth because I was a Buddhist monk. Then they believed that I automatically believed all these other things, and I questioned absolutely everything. Like really everything I question. If I can't observe it through my senses, then why bother with it? I'll give you a simple example. An example is there's a common theme in spiritual circles that we're all one, we're all connected, we're all one thing, just creating, drop like a wave on an ocean, observing yourself. Absolutely no way of observing that. Like, you can't know that. Like, that's a construct that we made up because it kind of makes us feel good and it makes sense, kind of, but we don't know that's true. I'm not saying it isn't true. I'm just saying that why go in to talk about those things, because that's just the philosophy you made up with. You may as well go out and say, well, God created man and Adam and Eve, and he created the man, and that's why. I mean, that's, for me, that could be just as true. I simply don't know, so I never discussed those things. And people wanted to discuss those things. So I was tired of the spiritual kind of craziness that goes on. And I just wanted to practice. And I believe that the best way to do that was to go back to society. And I felt like I was done with why I left, because I didn't have those questions anymore. Let's see, Andre said, move my body, that I find it difficult to calm down and have to move. Yeah, so that's a common thing. Andreas was talking about how he felt a nagging feeling and a resistance. And it's you sit down and there's like, it's called restlessness, basically. And it can be really strong. It can feel like you have ants crawling all over your body, and it's just like, oh, I just need to move, and it can be really uncomfortable. That's just it's just something that happens, and there are different ways of kind of dealing with that. One of them is that if it's too strong, you can stand up. Actually, stand up usually helps quite a lot. If you do walking meditation for a little while and then sit down, that can really help with that kind of thing. Another way to do it is just to sit through it, because it is just a distortion. It's a feeling of like, oh, I am uncomfortable. I need to move over here because then I'll be more comfortable. The body is, or mind, whatever, is revolting against the idea that you should sit still and just observe, because the whole self doesn't want to sit still. You're basically aggravating this identity that thinks it's so important. So, I mean, you couldn't just sit still for 20. Are you crazy? I can't sit still for 20 minutes. Do you know how important I am? I need to relate to all these things, and I need to be important and figure things out and work towards our future, and find my partner and find my career and make money and like all these things. So the self kind of like, oh, no, 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 like doesn't want to do that. So a good thing is actually just to sit with it and breathe through it. But if it becomes too difficult, it can really help to stand up and look at that. Or, like I said, do walking meditation. When we meditated, except for in certain centers, we always walked for 1 hour, and then we'd sit for 1 hour, and then we'd walk for 1 hour, and then sit with 1 hour. So it really helps to move and then sit, and not just sit the whole time. So if you have a lot of restlessness like that, it helps to move first and then sit or stand up, possibly lie down, but the risk is that you fall asleep. Some people have an easier time lying down than others. It's a bit depending on how you are as a person towards meditation. But it also goes in cycles. You feel that way now, but in a month it might be completely different, or tomorrow. I mean, it just depends. Did that answer the question, Andreas? See, Mats is saying, thanks for the meditation, Martin. See you next Monday, since I turned 30 on Thursday. Have a good one, everyone. Congratulations, Mats. Hope you have a nice party on Thursday, and we'll see you on Monday again. Yes, it's almost 9 o'clock. Perfect. You tried the hand meditation. Observation. How did it work, Mindful Mama? Thank you, Andreas. I mean, I'm happy to hear that, Andreas. Curious here about Mindful Mama's experience. And then I think it's about bedtime. Ooh. It was funny because there was a fly on my left hand almost the whole time. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Flies and mosquitoes, the bait of meditators, especially mosquitoes. It can be quite distracting, but very good things to observe. So easy to keep focusing there. But that's an interesting observation. So JVB, thank you for being honest about your experience as a Buddhist monk. It's quite funny that you got funny of those spiritual people. Yeah, it depends on why. I mean, there's a lot of people who are into that stuff. I just am not. I'm like, if anything, I'm an atheist that happened to be a Buddhist monk. Many distortions, Mindful Mama is saying, yeah. The very act of narrowing down your observation like that creates the separation. That's why I always say widen your awareness. I ask you to not observe a small point, and that's not just because like, oh, it's funny to do that, or like I think you should do it. No, there's a reason behind that, because when you focus on a small point, you tense up to narrow your sense of awareness into that point, and it creates the sensation of more self. But when you release that and just observe wide fields, there's less strong self of I am here, this strong like centered point. So really, like, one of the reasons that I do this is because if you have felt that release and relaxedness, and then you focus, you can, oh, that's unpleasant actually. I can feel that there's a sense of discomfort here. And that's part of the reason why we do the meditation, because I want you to become aware of how doing that is unpleasant and how it's not something you want to do, even though we do that our whole lives without even knowing it or thinking about it. Mindful Mom is saying, from the feeling to need to move to many thoughts coming up, running from one thought into another. Yeah, there can be quite a lot of thoughts when you sit. Good. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you again on Thursday, and I hope you have a really pleasant week. Good night.